She had always loved the sound of music, even as a little girl, when most children were running around outside or watching cartoons. She would sit by the piano in her living room, her small fingers tapping at the keys, trying to make the notes sound just right. The piano wasn't fancy, and it had a few keys that stuck sometimes, but to her, it was perfect. It was her world, her secret escape from the noise and worries around her. Her family didn't have much money, so she never had a private teacher. She learned by listening, by watching videos, by practicing over and over until her fingers remembered what her heart wanted to play. Now, years later, she worked long hours at a small local cafe. The cafe wasn't glamorous. It was the kind of place where regular customers knew your name and you knew theirs. She wore the uniform of a waitress, moving quickly between tables, carrying trays of coffee, sandwiches, and cakes. Some days were easy, with a few friendly customers and quiet hours where she could catch her breath. Other days were exhausting, with orders flying in all at once, the kitchen staff shouting, and the sound of clinking cups and spoons filling her ears. Yet, even in the middle of the chaos, she never lost her love for music. She often hummed softly while working, tapping rhythms on the counter with her fingers, imagining the piano waiting for her at home. Her colleagues thought of her as quiet but kind. She didn't talk much about herself outside of small talk. Most people saw her only as the polite, hard-working waitress who never complained. They had no idea about the hours she spent at home, practicing piano pieces that could make grown people cry or smile in awe. Music wasn't just a hobby for her, it was a part of who she was. It was where she felt free, where she felt alive, where she could express emotions that words could never capture. Her apartment was small and modest. There wasn't much space, but in the corner of the living room stood her piano, slightly worn but cherished. It had scratches and marks from years of playing, but to her, those were badges of honor. She had spent countless nights sitting at that piano, fingers flying over the keys, learning new songs, perfecting the ones she already knew. Sometimes she would play late into the night, the soft light from the lamp falling over the sheet music. The city outside her window slept, but in her little apartment, music filled the air and made everything else fade away. Life hadn't always been easy. She had faced times when she thought giving up would be simpler. Bills piled up, the cafe job was tiring, and there were moments when she felt invisible, like the world moved around her and didn't notice her at all. But every time she sat at the piano, those feelings melted away. She could pour everything into the music, the frustration, the hope, the dreams. It gave her strength and a quiet kind of happiness that no paycheck or applause could replace. Her mornings often started early. She would wake before the sun, make a cup of tea, and play for a little while before heading to work. Sometimes it was just a few simple scales, just to wake up her fingers. Other times, she played complicated pieces she had been struggling with for weeks, letting herself get lost in the music, forgetting the world outside. She had a favorite piece she loved to play when she was feeling particularly tired or stressed. It wasn't flashy or famous, but it had a soft, gentle melody that made her feel calm and hopeful at the same time. At work, she had moments of small joy. A regular customer would ask for their usual coffee and smile at her by name. A child would giggle when she brought a tray of pastries. Sometimes, she would catch a note of music playing from a nearby cafe or street performer, and it would remind her of the melodies waiting at her piano. Even though the work was tiring, she carried a quiet pride inside her. She knew she was working hard, but she was also living for something bigger, the music that she alone could create. She had dreams, even if she never shared them with anyone. She dreamed of performing in front of real audiences, of her fingers dancing across the keys on a big stage, of seeing people's faces light up when they heard her play. She imagined that moment often, and it made her heart race with excitement. Yet, she also knew that life wasn't always kind to dreamers. She had bills to pay, responsibilities to handle, and no guarantee that anyone would ever notice her talent. Still, she never let that stop her from trying. Every day, no matter how tired or worn out she felt, she returned to the piano, believing that one day, someone would hear her music and understand the magic she carried inside her. Her friends sometimes teased her gently about her obsession with the piano. They would say things like, "You spend more time with that piano than with us," or "When are you going to get a real job?" But she never minded. She knew that the piano was not just an instrument, it was a part of her soul. It was where she could be herself completely, where she could express feelings that were too deep or complicated to explain in words. And when she played, the world seemed to stop, if only for a little while. The notes carried her beyond the walls of her small apartment, beyond the cafe where she worked, beyond the ordinary life she lived day by day. Sometimes, she would imagine what it would be like to play in front of someone who really understood music, someone who could feel the emotions behind every note she played. She didn't know if that person existed, but she hoped. She practiced with that hope in her heart, letting it guide her fingers, letting it make her music even more powerful and beautiful. Even if no one ever heard her, she knew that the music had a life of its own, and it gave her a sense of purpose that nothing else could. Evenings at the cafe were the hardest. The rush of customers, the clatter of dishes, the smell of coffee and baked goods, it could be overwhelming. She would move from table to table, smiling and serving, keeping her head down, and doing her job as best as she could. Sometimes she would steal a glance at the clock, wishing it were just a little later so she could go home and play the piano. The moment she stepped into her apartment, the weight of the day would fall away. Sitting at her piano, she could let go of everything else, the exhaustion, the stress, the worries. In those moments, she felt light, free, and alive. She had a small notebook where she wrote down her thoughts and ideas for new music. She scribbled notes about melodies, rhythms, and feelings she wanted to capture. Some of the ideas would turn into full pieces, while others remained as fragments, waiting for the right time to come alive. She didn't care about fame or money. She cared about the music, about creating something beautiful and real, something that could touch people's hearts. The piano was her way of communicating, her voice when words were not enough. Life was simple, and sometimes it felt lonely, but she never felt empty, because she had her music. It was her companion, her comfort, and her dream all rolled into one. Every day, she worked, she played, and she hoped. And even though the world outside her apartment might not notice, she knew that her music was important, that it mattered, and that one day, it could change her life in ways she couldn't yet imagine. One ordinary Tuesday afternoon, while she was wiping down the tables at the cafe, a poster on the bulletin board caught her eye. It was bright, colorful, and full of excitement. It announced a talent competition that would be held in the town's community hall. The winner would get a chance to perform in front of a famous piano judge, someone who was known for discovering extraordinary talent. She paused for a moment, her rag still in her hand, staring at the poster. Her heart beat faster. For a moment, she felt a rush of excitement mixed with doubt. Could she, a simple waitress with no formal training, ever compete with people who had studied music for years? Her co-workers noticed her staring. They leaned over and teased her gently. Thinking of auditioning? One of them asked with a grin. She smiled weakly and shook her head. Maybe, she replied softly, not sure if she really meant it. Deep down, the idea of performing in front of a real judge made her both nervous and thrilled. The thought had never occurred to her before, not seriously. Music had always been something private, a secret world she kept to herself. But now, the possibility of sharing it with others felt both terrifying and exciting. That evening, after her shift, she sat at her piano at home. She played a few scales, her fingers moving over the keys with familiarity and ease. Then she tried some of her favorite pieces, letting the music fill the small room. She imagined the competition, the judge, the audience, and for a moment, it felt real. She could almost hear the applause, see the faces of people moved by her music. She closed her eyes and let her imagination take over. The fear began to fade, replaced by a spark of hope she hadn't felt in a long time. She spent the next few days thinking about the competition constantly. At first, she hesitated, wondering if it was foolish to try. What if she failed? What if people laughed at her? But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that she would regret it if she didn't try. Music had always been her companion, and this was an opportunity to let it shine in the real world. It wasn't about winning. It was about showing herself what she was capable of. Finally, she made the decision. She would enter the competition. She signed up online, filled in her details, and sent in a short video of herself playing one of her pieces. Her hands shook slightly as she recorded it, but she played with all her heart. When she uploaded the video, she felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. She had done it. She had taken the first step. Now all she could do was wait and hope that her music would reach the judge, and that she would be given the chance to perform in person. In the days that followed, she continued her routine at the cafe, but everything felt different. Each cup of coffee she poured, each table she cleared, every smile she gave to a customer was tinged with anticipation. She imagined the moment she would sit at a real piano, in front of someone who could truly appreciate her music. Sometimes she caught herself daydreaming, and her co-workers would tease her about being lost in thought again. She would laugh it off, but inside, she felt a quiet excitement building. When the response finally came, she could hardly believe her eyes. She had been selected to audition in front of the judge. Her hands trembled as she read the email, and she read it again and again to make sure she wasn't imagining it. This was the moment she had been dreaming of, and now it was real. She felt a mix of joy, fear, and disbelief. How could a simple waitress like her, with no formal training, be given such an opportunity? Yet, here it was, an open door she could walk through if she dared. The next challenge was preparation. She spent hours each day practicing, perfecting every note, every rhythm. She wanted to be ready, not just for the judge, but for herself. She wanted to show that her music was real, that her talent was genuine. She practiced late into the night, sometimes until her fingers ached, but she never stopped. Her small apartment became a world of music, each day bringing her closer to the day she would perform in front of the judge. She also had to balance her job at the cafe. The days were long, and sometimes she was so tired that she could hardly keep her eyes open. Yet, the thought of the competition kept her going. Even when she spilled a tray of drinks or dropped a plate, she would laugh at herself and keep moving, knowing that every step she took was bringing her closer to her dream. Her co-workers started noticing a change in her. There was a brightness in her eyes, a determination in her movements, and a quiet confidence she hadn't shown before. They asked her about it, and she would just smile mysteriously, not wanting to spoil the magic of her secret. The night before the audition, she could hardly sleep. She lay in bed, imagining the stage, the piano, the judge, and the audience. Her mind raced with every possible scenario, from mistakes to triumphs. She felt nervous, of course, but she also felt alive in a way she hadn't for years. She reminded herself that no matter what happened, this was her chance to share her music, and that alone was worth everything. On the morning of the audition, she woke early, her heart pounding with excitement. She dressed simply, in clothes that were comfortable and familiar. She didn't need fancy outfits or makeup. She just needed to be herself. She packed a small bag with her sheet music and a few personal items, took a deep breath, and left her apartment. The streets were quiet, the city slowly waking up, and she felt a sense of calm settle over her. She was ready. When she arrived at the community hall, she was amazed at the size of it. The stage was large, with a shiny grand piano in the center. People were milling about, some stretching their fingers, some warming up, and some chatting nervously. She felt a wave of anxiety wash over her, but she pushed it aside. She reminded herself that she had worked hard, that her music was real, and that she belonged here just as much as anyone else. She walked in, signed in, and found a quiet corner to wait for her turn. The sounds of other pianists practicing filled the hall, but she focused on her own breathing, letting it steady her. As her turn approached, she felt the familiar thrill of anticipation. The moment was almost here. She stepped onto the stage, her hands trembling slightly as she touched the keys. The audience was there, waiting, and at the center, the judge sat, observing silently. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes for a brief second, and then let her fingers move over the piano. The first note rang out, clear and steady, and in that moment, everything else faded away. All her doubts, fears, and worries disappeared. There was only the music, flowing from her heart through her fingers and into the room. As she played, she felt a connection with something bigger than herself. Each note carried emotion, each melody told a story, and she poured everything she had into the performance. The audience leaned forward, captivated, and even the judge seemed to sit a little straighter, paying close attention. For the first time, she realized that music was not just something she did alone in her apartment. It was something that could touch people, move them, and make them feel. And in that moment, she understood that this was why she had spent all those years practicing, why she had never given up, why she had held onto her dream even when life seemed ordinary. When the last note faded, the room was silent for a heartbeat, and then the applause began. It wasn't just polite clapping, it was genuine, heartfelt appreciation. She looked up at the judge, whose eyes were wide with surprise and admiration. She felt a rush of relief, joy, and pride. She had done it. She had shared her music, and it had been heard. For the first time, she realized that her dream was not just a fantasy. It could become reality, one note at a time, one performance at a time. And this was only the beginning. When she walked onto the stage for her official audition, a strange mixture of excitement and nervousness ran through her. The bright lights made the room feel larger than life. She saw the grand piano, gleaming under the spotlight, and felt a sudden rush of awe. Around her, other contestants were tuning their instruments, whispering to themselves, or practicing small sections. Some were dressed in fancy performance attire, while she was simply in her comfortable outfit, the one she felt herself in. She felt out of place for a brief moment, wondering if she truly belonged there. But she shook her head and reminded herself that this moment was hers, earned through years of dedication and countless hours of practice. The judge, sitting at the front, looked over her briefly, giving a small nod before returning to his papers. She felt the weight of his eyes and a flutter of anxiety, thinking that he would not be impressed by someone like her. She had no formal training, no polished background, just countless nights of practicing alone in her apartment. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes for a second, and let herself remember why she had chosen to be here. This wasn't about competition or approval. It was about sharing the music she had spent her life loving. Her hands touched the keys gently, and the first note escaped, soft but steady. She felt the familiar comfort of the piano beneath her fingers. With each note, her confidence grew. She played the opening piece she had spent weeks perfecting, each melody flowing naturally, as if the piano itself understood her heart. Her fingers moved in perfect rhythm, gliding over the keys with emotion, precision, and depth. The room, the audience, even the nervous energy of the other contestants seemed to fade. All that remained was her and the music. As she continued, she noticed a shift in the audience. People leaned forward in their seats, eyes focused, ears attentive. Some closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. Even the judge, who had seemed distant at first, now leaned forward slightly, his expression showing a mixture of surprise and admiration. It was in that moment she realized that her music was not just for her own escape. It could touch others, connect with people in a way words never could. She played with everything she had, pouring years of practice, hopes, fears, and dreams into each chord. She had learned long ago that music was about feeling, about sharing emotion. It wasn't about showing off or proving a point. It was about letting her heart speak through her hands. And on that stage, she could feel the music speaking for her, reaching out to everyone who was listening. The applause that followed each section was small but genuine, a subtle encouragement that urged her to continue with even more energy and passion. She remembered the quiet nights in her apartment when she had sat at the piano, unsure if anyone would ever hear her music. She thought about the way the keys had felt under her fingers, the melodies that had once seemed so fragile and personal. Those nights had prepared her for this moment. They had built her skill, yes, but more importantly, they had built her heart for music. She realized then that this was never just about talent. It was about perseverance, belief, and love for what she did. Midway through her performance, she began a particularly challenging piece. The notes were fast, intricate, and required complete focus. Her hands moved quickly, yet gracefully, hitting every key with precision. Her mind stayed calm, her heart steady. She had practiced this piece so many times that it felt like second nature. Yet every time she played it, she poured a little more of herself into it. She felt the music building, a wave rising from her fingertips, moving through her arms, spreading through the room. She could feel the energy of the audience responding to her, their silent attention fueling her performance. For a moment, she hesitated on a note, a small flicker of doubt creeping in, but she quickly recovered, letting her instincts take over. She realized that perfection wasn't the goal, emotion was. She played with honesty, allowing herself to be vulnerable on the stage. Every rise and fall of the melody carried her own story, years of struggle, dreams of recognition, quiet nights spent in solitude with nothing but music. She knew that this authenticity was what made music truly powerful. The audience could sense it, and she could feel the connection growing stronger with every chord. By the end of the piece, her heart was racing, and her palms were slightly sweaty, but a calm satisfaction settled over her. She had done it. She had shared a piece of herself, fully and completely. She let the final note linger, feeling its resonance fill the hall before fading into silence. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then, slowly, applause began, first tentative, then stronger, louder, filling the space with warmth and encouragement. She looked up at the judge and saw him smiling, something she had not expected. His eyes held admiration, respect, and perhaps even a touch of wonder. She had captured his attention in a way she hadn't dared to imagine. As she left the stage, other contestants nodded or whispered congratulations, but she barely noticed. Her mind replayed the music she had just played, the energy she had felt, the connection with the audience. She had never imagined performing like this in front of anyone, let alone a judge of such renown. Yet, here she was, feeling the exhilaration and the relief of having shared her gift with the world. She realized that this was only the beginning, a step into something larger than she had ever dreamed. Backstage, she took a deep breath, letting the adrenaline subside. She felt a quiet pride in herself, a validation that all those nights of practice had not been wasted. She knew she had done her best, and that was enough. The judge's reaction, the audience's applause, and the feeling of playing with her whole heart were confirmation that she had a place in this world of music. She had discovered her strength, her ability to rise above fear and doubt, and her courage to share something deeply personal with strangers. As she walked out of the audition hall, the sun was beginning to set, casting a warm golden glow across the streets. She felt lighter somehow, as if a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying had been lifted. The ordinary world of work, errands, and daily life seemed a little brighter, a little more alive. Music had always been her escape, but now it was a bridge, connecting her to the world in ways she had never imagined. She felt ready for whatever came next, whether it was more performances, challenges, or opportunities. She knew that she had proven something important not just to the world, but to herself. Her walk home was slow and thoughtful. She replayed the performance in her mind, remembering the first note, the tricky passages, the moments when she had lost herself in the music. Each memory brought a smile to her face. She thought about the life she had been living, balancing work and dreams, and realized that she had taken the first real step towards something bigger. It was a feeling she wanted to hold on to, a reminder that courage and passion could lead to unexpected, wonderful places. At home, she sat at her piano once more, not to practice, but to reflect. She played a soft, simple melody, letting her fingers move slowly across the keys. The notes were gentle, comforting, and full of hope. She allowed herself to imagine what the future might hold: more stages, more music, and more people touched by the stories she could tell through her piano. She didn't know exactly what would happen next, but she felt a deep sense of confidence. She had discovered her own strength, her own voice, and that was priceless. In the following days, she continued to work at the cafe, but everything felt different. The music inside her had grown louder, stronger, and more confident. Every cup she poured, every plate she carried, every smile she shared carried a new energy, a spark that wasn't there before. She felt as if she were living in two worlds at once, one of daily life and one of music, both intertwined, both giving her meaning. And she knew that no matter what happened with the competition, no one could take away the experience of performing with her whole heart, the courage she had found, or the joy of sharing her music with the world. After her performance, she waited nervously for the judge to speak. The room was quiet, filled with contestants shifting on their feet and whispering to each other. She tried to stay calm, but her heart raced as she glanced at the judge. He had been silent for a long moment, just sitting there with his hands folded, observing her closely. She wondered if he had noticed every mistake, every hesitation, or if he even cared. Then he spoke, and his voice was calm but carried a weight that made everyone pay attention. He asked her how long she had been playing the piano. She hesitated for a moment, then told him that she had been self-taught since childhood, learning on her own without a formal teacher. She explained that she worked long hours as a waitress and practiced whenever she could. The judge listened intently, nodding occasionally, his expression thoughtful. She could see that he was impressed, but not just by her performance, by her dedication, her persistence, and her love for music. He leaned forward, and for the first time, a warm smile appeared on his face. He told her that her performance had been remarkable. He said that he had seen many talented pianists in his life, but her music had something different. It wasn't just about technique, it was about emotion, honesty, and heart. He explained that those qualities could not be taught in a classroom, they came from within, from a person who truly cared about what they played. She listened, feeling a mixture of disbelief and joy. His words validated everything she had worked for, everything she had dreamed of. The judge went on to ask her about her dreams and goals. She spoke softly but clearly, explaining that she wanted to share her music with others, to perform in front of audiences, and to make people feel emotions through her piano. She admitted that she didn't know where it would lead, but she was willing to work hard for it. The judge nodded approvingly, saying that this kind of honesty and passion was rare and valuable. He offered to mentor her, to help her develop her skills further and guide her toward opportunities where her talent could shine. She could hardly believe what she was hearing. The thought that someone of his experience saw potential in her was overwhelming and exhilarating at the same time. The news spread quickly among the contestants and the small crowd waiting outside. People congratulated her, some asking how she had learned to play so well without formal training. She smiled and thanked them, but her mind was elsewhere, thinking about the possibilities that had suddenly opened up. For years, she had played for herself, for the comfort and joy it brought her. Now, she could play for others, with guidance and support that she had never imagined possible. The future seemed full of opportunities, and for the first time, she felt that her dreams were within reach. The days following the audition were a whirlwind of excitement and preparation. She began working closely with the judge, learning new techniques, practicing advanced pieces, and refining her style. The lessons were intense but invigorating, pushing her beyond what she thought she was capable of. Each day brought new challenges, new discoveries, and new reasons to believe in herself. She learned not just about music, but about discipline, patience, and the importance of expressing emotion through her performance. The piano became an even more powerful tool, a way to communicate stories and feelings that words could never capture. At the same time, she continued her work at the cafe. Balancing her job and her musical development was not easy. Some days were exhausting, filled with back-to-back shifts and long hours on her feet. Yet, she approached each day with renewed energy, knowing that every moment brought her closer to her goals. Her colleagues noticed a change in her. She carried herself differently, with a quiet confidence and a calm determination. They could sense that something special was happening in her life. Even if they didn't know all the details, she also began performing at small events, local gatherings, and charity functions. At first, it was intimidating to play in front of strangers, but she soon discovered the joy of connecting with an audience. Watching people smile, close their eyes, or sway to the music filled her with a sense of fulfillment she had never experienced before. She realized that her music had the power to affect people, to touch their hearts, and to create moments of beauty in everyday life. Each performance built her confidence, and she felt herself growing as a musician and as a person. Her life began to change in subtle ways. People she had never met would stop her on the street, recognizing her from performances or from videos online. Some offered opportunities, others simply expressed their admiration. She felt a mixture of excitement and humility, grateful for the support and recognition. Yet, she remained grounded, remembering her beginnings as a waitress and the countless hours spent alone with her piano. She knew that her journey had started with passion and perseverance, and that those qualities would continue to guide her. Through it all, she remained deeply connected to her music. She practiced daily, exploring new pieces, experimenting with different styles, and pushing herself to grow. The mentorship she received from the judge was invaluable, providing guidance, encouragement, and constructive feedback. He challenged her to think beyond the notes, to consider the emotions behind each piece, and to find her unique voice as a performer. She embraced every lesson, understanding that each step brought her closer to becoming the musician she had always dreamed of. One evening, after a long day of work and practice, she sat at her piano and reflected on her journey. She thought about the life she had led before the audition, the quiet nights, the hard work at the cafe, the moments of doubt and longing. She realized how far she had come, and the thought filled her with gratitude and awe. She had taken a risk, shared her talent, and been recognized for it. But more importantly, she had discovered her own strength, her resilience, and her ability to pursue her dreams despite the challenges. As she played a soft, gentle piece that evening, she felt a deep sense of peace. The music flowed effortlessly, carrying her emotions across the room. She imagined the future, the stages she might perform on, the audiences she could reach, and the lives she could touch with her music. She knew that the road ahead would not always be easy, but she also knew that she had the courage, talent, and determination to continue. Her journey was no longer just about playing the piano. It was about embracing her potential, sharing her gift, and living a life filled with passion and purpose. The judge continued to support her, arranging opportunities for her to perform in more prominent settings, introducing her to other musicians, and helping her navigate the world of professional music. Each experience brought new lessons, new connections, and new reasons to keep moving forward. She felt a growing sense of belonging, knowing that her music mattered and that her efforts were recognized. The recognition was thrilling, but it was the love for the music itself that kept her motivated. She understood that success was not just measured by applause or accolades, but by the impact of her music and the joy it brought to others. Through this journey, She also discovered the importance of balance. She learned to manage her time between work, practice, and rest, ensuring that she could give her best to both her music and her daily life. She realized that her experiences as a waitress had shaped her, giving her patience, resilience, and empathy qualities that enriched her performances and her connection with her audience. She understood that every part of her life contributed to her growth, and she embraced each aspect with gratitude and awareness. As months passed, she felt a transformation within herself. She had moved from being a quiet, hard-working waitress to a confident, passionate musician ready to share her gift with the world. The journey had not been easy, but it had been worth every challenge, every moment of doubt, and every long night of practice. She had discovered her true potential, her unique voice, and the joy of pursuing her dreams. And with the support of her mentor and the growing recognition of her talent, she knew that the future held even greater possibilities for her music and her life. Her life continued to change in ways she had never imagined. She was no longer just a waitress with a secret passion. She was becoming a musician people wanted to hear. She had started performing at small events, but now she was being invited to bigger stages. The excitement of playing in front of a larger audience was both thrilling and intimidating. Every time she sat at the piano, she reminded herself that it wasn't just about impressing others. It was about sharing her music with honesty and heart. With the mentorship she received, she began to grow not only as a performer, but also as a person. She learned about self-discipline, stage presence, and how to express emotion through music in a way that connected with listeners. The judges' guidance was invaluable, offering advice on technique, posture, and even the subtle details that made a performance memorable. Yet, even with all this guidance, she never lost the essence of her music, the purity and authenticity that had first drawn people to her. Her apartment, once a quiet place where she practiced in solitude, became a hub of creativity. She spent hours composing small pieces, experimenting with melodies, and sometimes recording herself to understand how her music would feel to others. Even though she now had opportunities to perform publicly, the private moments at her piano were just as important. They reminded her of why she had started playing in the first place, keeping her grounded and connected to the joy of music. Balancing her job at the cafe and her growing musical career was challenging. Some days were long and exhausting, but she approached each day with renewed determination. She learned to manage her time carefully, ensuring she had enough energy to both work and practice. Her colleagues noticed the change in her. There was a new confidence in her movements, and a quiet glow in her eyes. They asked her questions about her performances, and though she spoke humbly, she could see the admiration in their faces. Her story inspired them, showing that dedication and talent could open doors in unexpected ways. Her performances began to attract attention beyond her small town. Videos of her playing were shared online, and messages of encouragement poured in from strangers who were touched by her music. The recognition was overwhelming at times, but she embraced it with gratitude. Every note she played became a connection with people she had never met, a way to share her emotions and experiences across distance. She realized that her music had the power to reach hearts, to comfort, inspire, and even heal in small ways. Opportunities kept growing. She was invited to perform at charity events, local concerts, and eventually, music festivals. Each stage brought new challenges, but also new rewards. The thrill of performing, of seeing people moved by her music, never diminished. She learned to channel her nerves into energy, to let the audience feel what she felt, and to tell stories through her hands on the keys. Every performance was a learning experience, building her confidence and shaping her as a musician. Despite the growing recognition, she remained humble. She remembered the nights when she practiced alone, the struggles of balancing work and passion, and the feeling of being unnoticed in a world. Those memories kept her grounded and motivated. She knew that her journey was not just about fame or accolades. It was about the joy of creating music, the satisfaction of expressing herself, and the impact her music could have on others. She carried this perspective into every performance, ensuring that her heart remained at the center of her music. Over time, she started composing original pieces, blending the styles she had learned with her own unique voice. Each composition was a reflection of her journey, her emotions, and her growth as a musician. She shared these pieces at performances and online, receiving praise for her creativity and expressiveness. Composing gave her a new level of fulfillment, allowing her to tell stories that were entirely her own. She discovered the joy of creating something that could touch others in ways she had never imagined. Her mentor continued to guide her, introducing her to other musicians, teaching her about music theory and helping her navigate the professional world of music. She learned about the business side of performing, from contracts to scheduling, and gained the confidence to take control of her career. Each lesson reinforced the importance of dedication, resilience, and staying true to her own artistic vision. She realized that success was not just about talent, it was about hard work, adaptability, and the willingness to learn continuously. With each passing day, she felt more connected to her music and to the people who appreciated it. She received messages from fans who said her music had inspired them, comforted them, or helped them through difficult times. Those messages filled her with a sense of purpose, reminding her that her music had meaning beyond herself. She began to understand that her gift was not just for her own enjoyment. It was a way to make a difference in the world, to touch hearts and bring beauty into people's lives. The balance between work, practice, and performance became easier over time. She learned to manage her energy, to prioritize her time, and to listen to her own needs. Even as her life became busier, she never lost the simple joy of sitting at her piano and playing purely for the love of music. Those quiet moments reminded her of her beginnings and kept her grounded. She understood that the journey was as important as the destination, and that every practice, every performance, and every challenge was part of her growth. She started receiving invitations to larger venues and more prestigious events. Each opportunity was a step further into a world she had only dreamed of. She embraced them with courage, performing with the same honesty and passion that had always guided her. The audience's reactions, the applause, and the recognition became affirmations of her hard work and dedication. Yet, she never let it change who she was. She remained humble, grateful, and focused on the music itself. Through it all, she never forgot her life before the piano became public. She remembered the quiet nights in her apartment, the long hours at the cafe, and the dreams she had quietly nurtured. Those memories were a source of strength and inspiration, reminding her that determination and passion could turn even the most ordinary life into something extraordinary. She often reflected on her journey, appreciating the growth, the challenges, and the joy that music had brought into her life. As she continued to perform and compose, she began to think about the future. She dreamed of recording her own album, performing internationally, and sharing her music with as many people as possible. She imagined inspiring others to pursue their own passions, to believe in themselves, and to take risks for the things they loved. Her journey had started with a simple love for the piano, and it had grown into a path that could touch countless lives. She understood that her story was not just her own, it was a story of hope, courage, and the power of following one's dreams. Even as her life became busier and more public, she remained deeply connected to the music itself. She practiced daily, explored new pieces, and composed with intention and care. Every performance, whether for a small audience or a large crowd, was an opportunity to share a part of herself. She approached each note with focus, emotion, and honesty, knowing that it was through these moments that her music could truly resonate with others. In quiet moments, she reflected on how far she had come, from a waitress playing piano alone in her apartment to a rising musician performing on real stages. Her journey had been filled with challenges, growth, and triumphs. She felt gratitude for every experience, every lesson, and every person who had supported her along the way. She knew that her story was still unfolding, and that the future held even more opportunities, discoveries, and joys. Yet, she also knew that the foundation of her journey, the love for music, the dedication to practice, and the courage to share her talent would always remain at the heart of who she was. Her story became an inspiration to others. People who had watched her journey online, attended her performances, or simply heard about her accomplishments felt encouraged to pursue their own passions. She realized that her music was not just a personal achievement, it was a way to motivate, uplift, and connect with others. The impact of her journey extended beyond herself, touching lives in ways she had never imagined. As she sat at her piano, playing softly one evening, she felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. The music flowed effortlessly, carrying her emotions, her dreams, and her gratitude. She understood that her journey had been shaped by her love for music, her perseverance, and her willingness to take risks. She felt a deep sense of pride, not only in her accomplishments, but in the person she had become. Her life had transformed, and yet, the essence of her journey, the passion for music and the courage to share it, remained unchanged. In the end, she knew that her story was a reminder that extraordinary talent can come from ordinary places. A simple waitress with a piano had captured the attention of a judge, inspired an audience, and touched countless hearts. Her journey showed that dedication, passion, and courage could turn dreams into reality. She had discovered her true potential, embraced her gift, and shared it with the world. And as she continued to play, create, and inspire, she knew that the music would carry her forward, guiding her toward new adventures, new stages, and new moments of connection, joy, and fulfillment.